Hello friends, thank you for watching this video. I am Mohamad and today we're gonna be discussing Git. We're gonna be understanding version control, what it is, how does it work, how we can actually utilize it within our project, the basic commands, and we're gonna be basically seeing it live in action, creating a repository, pulling it down, updating it, so on and so forth. If you like this video, please like, share and subscribe. It will really help the channel. As well, if you'd like to support me, please consider supporting me on Patreon or buying me a coffee. Now with that said, grab your cup of coffee and let's get started.
We're gonna start first by discussing what is Git and how does it work and why do we need it. Once we do that, we're gonna be seeing how we can actually configure Git locally on our machine, and then we're gonna be discovering all of the different terminologies, different actions, and different tools that we need in order for us to make sure that we are benefiting from Git 100% and familiarizing ourselves with the basic commands and understanding how everything works. So before we jump into anything, let us understand what is Git. And basically Git stands for Global Information Tracker, which means that it's a way where we can actually track all of the information that we currently have. But what does it actually mean? So let's imagine we have some kind of a folder, and let me add a folder here. And inside this folder I have different information. I'm gonna call this folder my application or folder 1. And inside this folder I have a lot of different data. For example, I can have my code, so I can have, for example, inside of the different folder, and this folder, for example, it can contain my source code. I have a different folder, for example, where it contain my scripts, my DB scripts, etc., etc. So right now what I have here is I have one single main folder, and inside this main folder, what do I have? I have two folders inside of it. And if I just want to find the right arrows here, let me find it. So inside this main folder I have two. I have one folder for the code, I have another folder for the scripts. And let's say inside my code folder I have, for example, HTML. I'm just going to find the HTML icon here. And here I have a HTML file called index.html. And I have another one stand for SQL, and I have here an SQL file. So let's say here, where is my SQL file? I have here an SQL file. So what I have here right now is I have one folder for my application, I have another folder for my script, and I have different files inside of it. That's all well, and all of these folders for now exist on my local machine. So for example, all of these are currently hosted on my local computer. So here, all of these are on my computer. So let's add it here. We say this is on the computer itself, which is a valid solution. But what happened in the scenario that, for example, my computer breaks? All of that is not gonna be feasible with me inside my local machine only. What I need to do is I need to store this file somewhere where I can actually refer to it. So what I need to do here, instead of relying on all of the information living inside my local computer, I need a place on the internet where I can actually put my code in. So here, for example, I'm just gonna call this server, or basically I'm gonna call it a service somewhere, internet service. I need to rely on some kind of an internet service where I can put all of these files there and basically have them directly on the internet service rather than having them only on my computer. So where does this lead us? So basically right now, instead of having all of these files available on my machine, I have also these files available on my internet service. But that's not enough, because basically what happened right now is I have two different versions of these files. I have one right now on my computer, I have a different version on the internet machine. How can I actually make sure that I have a single source of truth, which is going to be the one which is hosted on an internet service? What I can do is I can move all of these files from being on my computer, and basically once I move it all to the internet service, I can delete the one that I have locally. And then I take a copy, or basically what I can do is I can take the same files which is hosted on my internet service, but I can connect them to each other, which means that currently what I'm doing is I'm linking these two services together. So let me find this arrow here. So what I'm doing is I'm linking those files from my internet service to the one on my local machine. So in case these files have changed, these will change, and in case these will change, it will automatically update them. So what I'm creating here, I'm creating dependency between the files which currently exist on my local machine and the file which exists within this internet service. And these two dependencies and these two services which are currently working together will allow me to basically, here I'm gonna put local computer. So for example, if I want to move from one computer to another, I don't need to copy paste everything from here. All I need to do is get a new computer, and basically inside this new computer, I'm gonna call this local computer 2. I can just take another copy of whatever exists here, and I can just move it all the way to the local computer. See, I'm not copying from my local computer to a local computer. I'm just copying from the internet service provider, or basically this internet service that I currently have. What I'm doing here is basically I'm changing the dependency rather than having this local computer act as a single source of truth, and basically I need to copy the files from one place to another, make sure I have copied them and all of that. All I need to do is just make sure that all of the files that I need are updated on this service, and from there I will be able to utilize it. And I'm just gonna make sure that this is a two-way arrows, because basically these two-way arrows are gonna be like, I'm gonna take files from this internet service and I'm gonna put files back into this internet service. So it's two-way action. So now I can see now the benefit that, for example, if I want to move from one computer to another, if I lose my computer, if there's anything went wrong within my local machine, I have a copy of it. But what can I do more than that? So for example, now let's say I'm working with my colleague or my friend on a project, and I want to, for example, share my code with them. So instead of, again, copying the file, giving it on a USB, give it to them, or for example, trying to upload it to a share repository so they can have a copy of the file. If they do any changes on that file, they're gonna have a different version than what I currently have. It's gonna make the work together on these files gonna be really tricky, because I don't know what they changed, I don't know what I changed. It's gonna become really tricky. So what I can do, for example, in this case, I can just take another copy of this file. I'm just gonna copy it, as simple as that, and I'm gonna call this friend's computer. And for my friend's computer, what I need to do here is, instead of copying, what I can do is I can just give them permission to access my internet service. So what I'm doing here for my friend's computer, I'm giving them access to access my service or my file inside that service, and they can get a copy of it. So in case they do any changes, those changes will go directly to the internet service, and basically I can take them again, and basically if I do any changes on my machine, it will go to the internet service and then they can take it. So that way I'm having a single hosted repository of all of my files, which is going to be hosted somewhere on the internet. If I do any changes, it will go to that file, it will go to that service, and my friends will be able to access it. If any of my friends want to change the code, they can change the code, put it on that service, and then once they do it, I can access it. So now we're able to track the changes that we do. So if I do any change, they will be able to see if there is any change, they can be able to get it. If they do any change, I'll be able to see the change that they did it and get it on my machine. And if there's any error, for example, within my code, I can just compare where the changes and get exactly to the same error. So here what I'm doing is I'm removing all of the manual dependency from copying the file locally through USB, through hard drives, for example. I'm removing the problems with copying and cutting the files. I'm removing any problems when it comes to sharing code, specifically if anything goes missing, keeping track of the versions of all of the files, so on and so forth. And basically all of this is available for me through different services online. And all of these features that we have spoke about are basically the default benefit that I get from these services, but this service provide me much more. And Git is a very powerful tool, because basically it allows me to go through all of the different tracking of my information that I did to these files. From the first time I put a file all the way I can delete it, I can track every single bit of it. So what does this mean? So for example, let's say I did a lot of changes on this index.html. So I added, for example, a picture, my friend added another line, I added, for example, another paragraph, and then my friend added, for example, some scripts. But for any reason, I discovered that there's an issue with the initial code, and I wanted to understand who put it, and I want to basically refer to that in order for me to avoid any problems. With Git, I can keep versions. So for example, for every single file every time I update my files, what Git does is it keeps a version of these files. So here, for example, it could be version 1. So this is the latest version. So we can say version 1. Here, for example, actually this latest version will be the latest version. Here it could be, for example, version 4, version 3. This could be version 2. And this, for example, be version 1. So through that, what happens here is through Git, I can keep different versions of the same file. And if anything wrong with the latest version, which is here in this case version 4, I can, for example, if anything is wrong with that, I can directly switch it with version 2 and basically check whatever files exist inside version 2 and put it inside the latest version. So as well, this internet service here, or this Git service, allows me to keep versioning of my files. And as well, if I do any changes here, again, within these versions, my friends will get these versions, so on and so forth. So we can see here the main benefit that Git provide and the main thing that I'm able to get through Git. And this is a very small, quick intro about it. We're going to be delving more deep into how we can actually set up on our machine and understand the basic commands that currently exist. So the main popular Git service provider is GitHub. You have GitLab, you have Bitbucket, you have all of these other services, but the most common one and the most used one is going to be GitHub. GitHub, it's an amazing service which provides a lot of good benefits, and you can start with it for free. You don't have to pay anything. So to get started with GitHub, all you have to do is go to github.com and register an account. And once you register an account, you're going to be able to see something similar to this. Right now I have different repository available for me. That's completely fine. For you, it might be empty because you don't have anything. But again, all you're going to see is something like this. So the first thing that we want to do is we want a way where actually we are able to authenticate our GitHub account with our local machine. So what do I mean by that? So right now I'm just gonna illustrate it. Here we're gonna have our GitHub account. And within this GitHub account, I'm just gonna call my name is Mohamad's GitHub account. Mohamad's GitHub account. And within my GitHub account, I want to be able to create folders and create files. And for simplicity's sake, I'm just gonna take this folder icon here. I'm gonna call it app1 because it's gonna contain all of my apps, all of my code for my apps. And I'm gonna get a laptop icon as well, because basically this folder is gonna be inside my laptop here. So what I want to do is, I want somehow, when I wanna push, or basically when I want to put this application folder that I have inside my GitHub account, I want my computer and my GitHub to authenticate each other, to know each other, to basically know that this computer belongs to Mohamad and this account belongs to Mohamad. We need a way where these two services, or basically the GitHub service and my computer, recognizes each other and basically able to communicate securely. And whatever files I put in my computer inside that folder, GitHub will be able to recognize it and take it. So how can I do that? So what I need to do is I need to create some kind of a trust mechanism between this computer here and the GitHub account in order for me to be able to put this. And the way I do that is by creating secure keys. And what do I mean by secure keys? What I need to do is I want to create a secure key on my computer. And basically what I want to do is I want to store this key on my GitHub account. So this is going to be the source of the key. So here we're gonna create the key, and then I'm gonna store the key in my GitHub account. What does this mean? So once I create a key or create some kind of secure phrase, whenever I'm trying to communicate between these two, GitHub will ask the computer, what is the password or what is the key that you have in order for me to allow you access to my service? The computer will provide the key, and if that key matches, it will be able to provide the access. If I'm trying to put files, if I'm trying to take files, if I'm trying to change anything, it will require a key. No one will be able to access it unless they have a key. So the way I do that, I need to make sure that my computer generates this key, this secret, this password, and I need to store it on my GitHub in order for these two will be able to communicate. because if I do want to do anything, so for example, let's say I did some changes to my app 1 and I want to store it here. So this is now app 1. If I want to store it inside my GitHub account, I'm not going to be able to send it or basically store it there unless GitHub knows the key that I have generated here. So in order for us to generate those keys, we're going to be utilizing some of the default implementation that comes within our terminal. And the current implementation that I'm going to show you, it will work on Mac or Linux, but I'm sure there's a lot of the same implementation will work on Windows with Git Bash. So if you're on Windows, make sure you download Git Bash, install it, and follow the same exact command that I currently have. If you're on Mac and you have Homebrew, this is really easy to do. So I'm gonna open my terminal now. Once I open my terminal, I'm gonna utilize Homebrew to install Git. I'm gonna put brew install Git. I have already installed it, but if you haven't, please install it. It will take a couple of seconds. It will say that I am on the latest version. For you, it might be different. If you're on Windows, please install Git Bash. So once we have installed Git on our machine, the next step is I need to configure it. So, and the way I need to configure it, basically, whenever I am adding files to my Git service, or basically I am putting files there and taking files, I need to basically identify this computer. I need to give it some kind of a name so it will know. So for example, I can call it Mohamad's computer. I can put my name without computer. I can do different stuff. And the way I do that, I can put git config -- global, and I provide a user.name. I have already done that, but for example, I can put here user.name my email. So sorry, I can put my name, so Mohamad. And then once I do that, I need to click on enter. And then once I specify the name, I provide my email. And once I do this, for example, email mohamad@test.com. Once I provide my email as well, it will be able to work from there. So now that I have installed Git, I configure it, and these will work also on Windows and Linux, so make sure you do them. So git config -- global, and then you specify your user.email and user.name. And once you have done that, you have actually installed Git and you have configured it. Perfect. So now that we have done the basic essential that we need, which is installing it and configure it, now we need to do the next step, which is going to be the generation of the keys, or the secret, which is going to allow us, let me just make sure it's available here on the screen. We're going to create those keys, which is going to allow us to facilitate the communication between my computer and my GitHub account. And the way I do that, I'm going to utilize the keyword ssh-keygen, and I'm just going to copy this because it's easier for me rather than trying to type it. So I'm just going to copy the command. And here, this is going to be the command. So ssh-keygen-t. And then here I'm specifying the algorithm for the key. So for example, I cannot just generate a normal text key, so 1, 2, 3, 4. It needs to be some kind of a long encrypted key, so it will make it secure and no one will be able to access my file. And here what I'm doing is, when I put the -t, I'm just specifying the type of algorithm or the types of functionalities that I want to use in order for me to create those keys. And this algorithm or this functionality is called ED25519. And once I do that, I need to specify this key belongs to which email address. And in this case, I'm going to specify the email address which has created the GitHub account. So I can just put it, for example, mohamad@test.com. And once I do that, I click on enter, I'm going to get a key. And that's as simple as that. This is the only command that I need in order for me to create a key. So once I have created a key, now what I need to do is I need to copy this key and basically store it on my GitHub account. So let's see how we can do that. So to copy the key, I'm just gonna put the command here and we can go through it. In order for me to copy the key, I'm just gonna put the command here. I'm gonna utilize the cat command, and I'm specifying where is this key being stored. And then once I do that, I'm putting this character as then I put ppcopy. And what will this do is basically it will copy the key that I currently generated on my computer in order for me, and put it inside my local memory in order for me to directly post it and save it inside my GitHub. So now I have copied the key and I execute this. I'm gonna go back to my GitHub account. I'm gonna click on the profile pictures and I'm gonna go all the way down to settings. And inside settings on the left hand side, you're gonna be seeing something called SSH and GPG keys. So I'm gonna click on that. And once you click on that, you're gonna be able to see all of the previous keys that you currently have. If you don't have keys, don't worry about it. We're gonna create a new one. And now you're gonna go click on your SSH key. And then you're gonna put the key that you have generated here. And then you're gonna give it a name. You can give it any name that you want. And then click on add SSH key. As simple as that. Once you do that, you're gonna basically now, if you want to do anything on your GitHub and you connect it to your local computer, your machine will be able to recognize your GitHub account, and your GitHub account will be able to recognize your machine, and that way you'll have a secure communication between the two. So that's gonna be the first step. Now, once we have basically enabled this authentication and authorization between my GitHub account and my local computer, now what I want to do is basically I want to start experimenting with GitHub. I want to start putting files there. I want to remove files. I want to basically see the different functionality that it's provide me. So the first thing what we're going to do is we're going to create a new folder on GitHub, and the terminology for that is going to be repository. I want to create a new repository. So if we go back to my diagram here, instead of calling this a folder, I'm gonna basically call it a repository, and this repository is gonna be called app1, and this repository is gonna also be called app1 on my machine. So what I want to do on my GitHub account, you always need to start with your GitHub account. You need to create a repository there. You need to give it the name that you want, and then once you create that repository, you'll be able to get it on your local machine. So it's always created first on the GitHub, and then you get it on your computer. So what I want to do is I want to go back to my account. This is my own personal page, so I'm going to click on repositories, and as you can see here on the right hand side, you're going to have the new icon. So once you click on new icon, you're going to be seeing here the repository form that you need to fill in order for you to create one. So here, for example, you have a lot of different templates. I don't want to use any of them. I want, for example, to click on the owner here because I have different accounts. I'm going to choose the current account that I'm in, and I'm going to call this test repo. And we're going to basically utilize this only for testing purposes. I can give it a description. I can say this is created for a YouTube video. And then here I can specify if it's going to be public or private. So what does this mean? So I'm going to go back to my personal account, and let's say, for example, I'm going to take this one. So this one here, it is a private repository where I have, for example, my own personal website stored here. So, and because I am currently logged in to my GitHub account, I'm able to see all of this. But what happens if I take the same link and I'm gonna go into a private browser, and I'm just gonna go to it. So now you can see with the same link, I'm getting here 404. Why? Because this is currently a private repository. It means that I am the only person who's able to see it. But if I choose a public one, so if I go back here, I click on repositories, and let's say a public one, I think it's called, let's see what's a public one. So type public. So for example, this is a public one. If I copy this and I go to GitHub and I put it here, to a new different browser, you'll be able to see it because it's a public one. So that's going to be the main difference between public and private. So for the sake of this example, we're just going to make it private. So we're exploring different types of commands. So once we have created this, now we want to provide a README. It will be good to have it. It's not necessary. I want to get ignored. We're not going to go through this right now. License, I'm not going to through that right now. And once we have that, I'm going to click create repository. And then basically what I have here is I have right now my repository created, which means now my folder has been created successfully here. So now I have a new folder created, which it's called test repo. So now here, now my repository is called test repo. So right now my test repo has created on GitHub, but I want to be able to access my test repo on my computer. So how can I do that? What I need to do in order for me to access the test repo from my GitHub to my computer, I need to do something called cloning, which in simple term mean download it. I need to, let me add it here. So the first command that I need to do is I need to clone, or basically mean download the repo. And we need to understand this terminology. Clone means download the repo. So I'm cloning the repository on my machine, which is basically I mean to download it. But how can I do that? If I go here to my repository, I can see here that I have a green button which says code on it. And if I click on it, I can see here that I have a URL generated for me. And I'm going to utilize this URL so my computer will be able to find this repository and download it on my machine. So I'm just going to copy it. And the way that I'm going to get it is I'm going to open my terminal now. I'm going to go back to terminal. And I'm going to find where I want to store it on my machine. So I'm just going to navigate to my desktop. And inside my desktop folder, let me clear this up. I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to call it GitHub. I can call it whatever I want. I'm going to call it my apps, for example. And I'm going to go to my apps. And now what I want to do is I want to clone that repository that I have just created. So how can I do that? Because I'm interacting with Git, of course, I need to utilize the first keyword Git. And that way, when I execute it, my computer will know that I'm executing a Git command. Then I need to put clone, which basically I'm telling Git that it needs to go to that repository and get everything that exists there and put it on my computer. And then I need to put the URL that I have just copied. So once I have do that, I have basically put git clone, and then I have created or put the entire URL, and I'm gonna click on enter. So now what I'm doing is I'm starting cloning. And as you can see here, it started to ask for the password. It's telling me what is the password in order for you to have access to that file. So when I generated my key, it asking me if I want to put a password. I said yes. You might have not to, so that's completely fine. But in case you have said that, you're gonna see this pop up. And I'm just gonna input my password. And now, once I have done that, it basically downloaded everything. So right now, if I open this file on inside Visual Studio Code, you can see right now inside my folder, I have test repo and I have this empty README file. Perfect. So now this README here says this is created for a YouTube video. So if I go back to my web browser, I can see here the same sentence. This is created for a YouTube video. So I want to change this. I want to say this has been created by Mohamad Lawand for a YouTube video. Let me see how can I do that. So right now, locally, since I got the file right now locally on my machine, if we go here right now, I have cloned the repository from the file, from my GitHub to my machine, and I want to basically update it right now to have different information there. So instead of saying this, I want to change this into this is created by Mohamad Lawand for a YouTube video. So now that I have created this and saved it, if I go back here to my web browser and I refresh and I click on the README file, we can see it still stays the same. It did not update. Why it did not update? Because basically I have the changes currently available only on my local computer. And basically what I want to do now is I want to tell Git that it needs to take those changes and put them onto that service online into GitHub. It needs to basically copy whatever I have locally on my machine and put it inside my GitHub. So how can I do that? Pretty straightforward. So if I go back to my terminal and if I go to my folder, right now, because I have something called all my ZSH installed, I'm able to see that I am on the main and I am basically have a GitHub repository. So don't worry about that. If you don't have it, it's completely fine. So the first thing that I want to do inside my terminal, I'm going to click on Git status. And when I type Git status, what is it going to do? It's going to tell me that there's a file called modified file called readme.md. And this modified file that I have is different from the one which currently exists on the service. Fair enough, I updated it, it's gonna be different. So how can I basically start the process of moving this file locally from my machine to GitHub? It's pretty straightforward. What I need to do is I wanna utilize the keyword git, and I wanna utilize add and put a dot. So when I put git, which is basically it's a git command, add, it means that I'm adding files and put dot and run it. What happens here basically is gonna take the current modified file and put it in a state that is ready to be uploaded online. No matter if it's a new file, if it's a deleted file, if it's an updated file, I always have the git add command whenever I want to add those files. So git add, and the reason that I put dot here because I want to take everything, and because I only have one file, it's gonna take it directly. So once I have added the file and it's gonna be ready for it to be pushed, or basically to be uploaded to GitHub, what I want to do is I want to add a message in order for me, once I refer back to it, I understand why this change has happened or why did I update it. So I put git commit and -m stands for message, and I specify here the message that I want to add in order for me. So I'm gonna say this is this change was to enhance the description of the readme. Perfect. So what I'm doing here is I'm using the keyword commit, and commit means here that because I'm adding files, I need to specify some kind of a message, and you want to specify a version for that file, because as we said, GitHub will keep all of the different versions that I currently have. So for example, if I have a file and keep on updating it, updating it and updating it, it will keep versions of all of that. And by utilizing git commit, it's basically telling it that it needs to create a new version of that file, and then it needs to add a message to it, and this message is really important for me to understand why I have this new version. And once I have done that, let's make it a bit bigger. Now basically I have everything that I need to do. So basically I have git installed, I have committed it, and then basically I have added a message. So now that I have added and committed it, the next step is I need to upload it. And the way you upload stuff on GitHub is basically you push them onto the server. So when you get stuff for the first time, you clone them. And once you want to put those stuff back on GitHub, basically what you're doing is you're pushing them. And the way you do that, all you need to do is put git push origin. And let's run this. And it's going to ask me again. It will identify that I'm the same person. Again, if you did not set up a password, it will not ask you. Let me just make sure I did it correctly. And now basically what happened is it uploaded my file from my local directory into GitHub. And now if I go back to GitHub here and I refresh, we can see here that this is created by Mohamad Lawan for a YouTube video. It has been updated correctly. If I go back to my repo, we can see here right now that I have 2 commits, and we're gonna jump into this right now to understand what does it mean. But if we want to summarize what we did, is first we said to GitHub that I want to add the file because I have updated it. It needs to be aware that it needs to be uploaded. So I put git add and then the dot. And then basically what I did from that is I specified the keyword commit, which is basically allow me to create a new version and attach some message to it. And once I did that, I just pushed my file. So basically uploaded my file to GitHub, so GitHub will have it. And now basically I have here the latest version of my file, which is perfect. Now let us discuss what is this keyword commit here. So if I click on it, we can see that this file here, or basically it will give me the different versions of my file. So if I click on this initial commit, I can see here that I still can see the initial version of that file. If I go back and I click on the second one, I can see here now compared to the first version, I have added this extra 3 words. So we can see here by the keyword commit, it means that I have the different versions of the files that I have. Right now it's easy for us because I have a single file being uploaded, or basically being updated one at a time. But imagine if you have an application and you have tens of thousands of files. You're not gonna call it versions, you're gonna call it a commit, because basically you're taking a bunch of files together and basically you are updating it. And if you go back right now, let's go back, we can see here that every single version of the file, it will have its own unique ID. And basically within this unique ID, I'm able to, if I need to go back, I'm able to utilize this unique ID to go back to the previous version. So now what we have done is we have first of all, we've been able to cover what is cloning within Git and what is adding, committing and pushing. Now the next step that I want to do is I'm just gonna try to mimic as if I'm working from two different computers. So what I want to do inside my terminal here, I'm gonna open a new terminal, and let me see if I can put it directly next to each other. Yeah, let's put it like this, and let me zoom in here so it will look, I'm not sure why one is small, one is big. Let's close this. If we open new tab, what happens? Okay, if we open a new window, split lane. Okay, perfect. So now what I want to do is I want to go back to my desktop, and I'm gonna create a new, I'm gonna clone this again, just so I can mimic as if if two people are working on the same file together. And I'm gonna call this folder friends computer, and I'm gonna go to my friend's computer, and I'm gonna do the same thing as before. I'm gonna clone the same repository. So now I cloned it as if I'm cloning it into a different computer. Let's get back that link again. So I'm gonna go back to the repository, click on code, copy this and paste it here. It's gonna ask me for my password. I'm just gonna specify it. And now it's gonna clone it. Perfect. So now if I open this, or if I go to it, I type ls, we can see that I have the readme file. And if I want to view it, I can type nano, or I can open Visual Studio Code and I can see it. You can see that this file, which is the readme file, contains this text. Perfect. So let me close this. Now that I know for sure that I have two versions, so let us see it inside. Actually, no need for the Finder. So here, basically, now I have this one. I'm gonna show you one thing. So here, if I type pwd, you can see that this is stored inside my desktop, inside a folder called my apps, and have test repo. If I type pwd here, you'll see it's a completely different folder called friends computer, and it's called test repo. So now we are trying to mimic two computers. So what happens if I try to update this file from my friend's computer and I want to get it? So let's open this in Visual Studio Code again. So now we're going to have two versions of the same file. Let me make this a bit bigger. I'm going to say yes, trust. So this one here, I'm going to put it on the left hand side. This is my local one. This is the original one. And on the right hand side here is going to be my friend's computer. So on the right hand side is my friend's computer, and on the left hand side is going to be my local computer. So let me make this a bit bigger now. So now if I type here, we can see that it has the original same script. So I'm going to change this here. I'm going to say this file is going to be for a new application created by, let's say, the Formula One community. Something like the community, something like this. Doesn't really make sense, but I just want to make sure that I'm updating this file. So right now, I'm going to save this. And now here, you can see it's still in the old version, although it's on the same repository, but they are on the same version, different versions. If I go online, again, if I refresh, we still have here the one that I updated previously. It does not have the previous one. So let us update those changes to GitHub. How can I do that? If you said git add similar to what we have done before, that's correct. And then I'm gonna add a commit. -m, I'm gonna say here, this has been updated with more info. And now once I have done that, I just need to push it similar to what we have done before. Git push origin. And basically what I'm doing here, it's gonna ask me for my password. It's gonna push all of this back. And now if I come here and I refresh, we're gonna be seeing that I have the latest file available online, but locally I don't, because don't forget, now we are dealing in this scenario. I have two computers trying to access it. So this is Mohamad's computer. the file that has been just uploaded, it has been done by my friend, let's say its name is Homer's computer. So Homer basically did the same thing. Actually, let's take the same arrow, it's easier. So Homer decided also that he wants to work on the application and wanted to update it. So now that Homer has updated it, we can just, for example, give it, because again, as we said, all of them are just versions. So now Mohamad was on the first version, or basically on the second version. So we can put here next to it v1, and now Homer was updated it became on v2, and now the server is on v2 because we did a push, but again Mohamad is still on v1. So how can I get the latest version that has been uploaded into my local computer? It's pretty straightforward. So the keyword that I want to utilize here is git fetch, and git fetch is gonna be basically, it's gonna connect to GitHub. It's gonna ask it, give me the latest status of the file that you currently have, and GitHub basically is gonna send a list of files back. And my local computer, or basically my local computer is gonna do, it's gonna get this list, it's gonna compare them, and it's gonna see, okay, I have these two differences, it's gonna highlight them. If there's no differences, it's gonna say, okay, there's no differences. So if I click on git fetch, again, it's gonna request to check if it's me or not. And once I do that, it's gonna say, okay, there is one commit that has happened since the last time I did any changes, and this commit basically contains some information. And basically git fetch is just basically connecting and checking if there's any commits that has been happened, and basically there is one. And what happens that after I do a git fetch, now I want to do is basically I want to get this file. So what I do here is I put git pull, and basically pull is self-explanatory. I'm just pulling all of the new changes into my machine, into my local folder. So I just put a git pull, and it's gonna ask me for authentication. And once I do a git pull, basically we can see here that it was able to get the readme file, and basically it was able to get it directly from my GitHub repository and make it available on my own computer. So now if I go back to Visual Studio Code, you can see here the second one has automatically been updated, and here, for example, this one has been, so now they both match, which is exactly what I want to see. Now both of them are simultaneously. Now let's do it the other way around. So let's go back here so we can illustrate it. So now this has been updated from version 1 to version 2. Perfect. So now what I want to do is I want to add a new file so we can just increase the complexity and see this flow all over again. So now I'm going to add a new file. So inside Mohamad's computer, I want to see if Homer is able to get it. So inside, other than the readme, I'm going to create a new file here, and I'm going to call this file index.html, and I'm going to basically have a HTML page. I'm going to put a head, and I'm going to put also a body, and then here I'm going to put a title, and I'm gonna call it, this is my index page. I can call it whatever I want. And inside the body of the page, I'm just gonna put a paragraph, and I'm gonna say blah, blah, blah. I'm just gonna copy this multiple times, so we'll have very valuable content. Perfect. So now that I have this index page available, as you can see here, it's only available on my machine. It's not available on the other, on Homer's machine. If I go back to GitHub, I refresh, it's not there. I only have a README file. And I can see that I have 3 commits because we have updated 3 times now. How can I move this file? Again, let's go through this diagram step by step. So here, now this, because I have added it, this became version 3. And now what I want to do is I want to send this version 3 of my repo from GitHub to, from my computer to GitHub, and then from GitHub to Homer's computer. So the way I do that, let's go back to terminal. I'm gonna clear both of them so it will be easy for us to see. So the first thing that I need to do is I need to put git add, and basically this will tell Git that there's a new file, git commit -m, creating a new version and specifying a message. I'm gonna say adding an index page. And then once I commit it, I need to put git push. It's gonna ask me for the password and I'm gonna push it. Perfect. So now it has been pushed. Now basically this has become version 3. And let us verify that it works by coming here and refreshing. We should be able to see the index.html. Perfect, I can see the index.html. If I open it, we can see here that I have the text that I have added. Perfect. So now what I want to do is I want to basically update Homer's computer to get the latest version as well. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to go back here inside my terminal. And again, we said the first thing I want to do is a git fetch, just to see if there's any pending commits. I misspelled fetch, so git fetch. It's gonna ask me for the password. And now it's gonna tell me there is one pending commit. And basically what I wanna do is git pull, specify the password again. And basically here we can see that it actually got the index file. And basically it has created it locally. So now if I go here, we can see index available, the HTML is available as it is here. And now if I go back here and I can update my diagram, now this became also version 3. So right now what we have done is basically we have covered the basic scope, or basically the basic mechanism of Git, where basically we have a repository. I'm able to authenticate against it, put files there and get them between different computers. One last topic that we wanna explore today is gonna be branches, and why do we wanna need branches and why are they beneficial. So let's say I'm working on a very nice application and I decided for any reason that I wanna add a new feature to it. But this feature is gonna be experimental. I'm not sure if I wanna add it, I'm not sure if I wanna keep it, I just wanna experiment with it. And this feature, for example, it could be a redesign of the homepage, it could be a new functionality, it could be anything that I need. But I don't really want to mess around with the current version, because basically what I want to do is, for example, if I'm working part of the team, I want the team to continue working on the normal application while I am by myself experimenting with this new functionality. And Git makes it really easy for us. So let us illustrate branches. So now if I go here, if I go back to my application, I can see here that there's something called main. And if I click on it, it only says branches and main. So basically when I create my application and on GitHub, it will basically create a single source of truth, which is called main. And this single source of truth is what I'm currently utilizing in order for me to store all of my application. But what I want to do is I want to take a copy of this single source of truth. I want to branch out of it and basically utilize it for my own experimentation. And based on that, see if, for example, if I like it, I can put it back, I can merge the changes into the main branch. If not, I can remove it and I don't have to worry about it. And let's see this in visually. So if I go back here, when I created my test repo, so this one here, when I created this, it has created it inside a main source of truth called main. I'm gonna call this main. So I created in a branch called main, and this main is gonna be my main source of truth. So here basically is when I created the repo, then I did a commit, then I created another commit, and another commit, and another commit, so on and so forth. What I want to do now is I want to take whatever the latest version, so we can think this is a timeline. So let's put an arrow. We can think about this as a timeline. And this timeline here, it will start pretty straightforward, empty when I created it. And then, for example, here, when I commit, we can see, we can think about it as a timestamp, because every single commit has a unique timestamp. So here we have a timestamp, we have another timestamp, another one. Sorry if it's not really organized. etc., etc. So now what I want to do is I want to create another branch where I can actually experiment with this. And basically when I create another branch, what's happening is this main branch will continue to function normally, but what I'm doing is I'm taking a copy of the latest source code that currently exists, and from that I'm creating a new branch. And this branch can contain all of the information that I want to experiment with, add, update, delete, etc., etc. And what I want to do, I'm going to call this branch, let's say call it function 1, or I can call it functionality or new feature 1. So now I have main and I have a new feature 1. So by the time I'm going to create a new branch, it's going to take all of the changes currently exist in main. So let's see that in action. So if I go back to my terminal here, what I want to do here, if I type get the branch, it's going to show me that I only have one branch, which is called main, which is exactly that I want. And let's exit from this. And if I go here, again, as we saw, we have main. So now what I want to create a new branch, I put get branch dash b, and I'm gonna call it a new feature, new dash feature dash 1. So it should be get branch without the dash b, and new feature. So now if I type get the branch, we should be able to see two branches, the main and the new feature branch. Okay, perfect. So now I have inside my local computer, what I did is I have created a new branch. So here, basically I have two versions of the same file. So I have this one, for example, for now, I'm gonna call it v3 main because it was the latest version and it's on the main branch. Here I have new feature 1, new dash feature dash 1, and it's also a version v3. So now both of them, I have two versions. I have a new feature, I have main branch, and both of them are on version 3, which is perfect. What I want to do right now also is I want to have a way where I basically use this rather than this. So if I go back to my terminal, if I exit this, it's gonna be git checkout dash b new dash feature dash 1, new checkout without the dash b, and we can see here it says it switched to a branch called new feature 1, and this new feature 1 is going to be the branch. So now, and this is really important, if I go to my Visual Studio Code, you can see here now I am on new feature 1. This is like, it tells me exactly where I am. If I go to my friend's computer, you can see here it's on main. So we can see now this is on main and this is on main feature 1. So what I want to do right now inside this new branch, I want to basically create a lot of different paragraphs just to make sure it's a completely different version. I'm going to save this. And the README here, I'm going to say, let's make it like this. I'm going to say branch, new branch, something like that. New branch. So here I have a lot of changes. So I have updated my README, I have my index changes, so completely different. So now what I have here locally on my machine, I have this one has shifted to version 4. And here, basically, I want to now add this new branch into GitHub. So now in GitHub, I will have two, which is going to be main and the new feature. So how can I do that? It's pretty straightforward. We have already covered this command before. I need to put git add, git clone, git commit, -m, provide the message, adding a new branch with new functionalities. and then git push. It's gonna tell me here that in order for me to push, I need to specify, I need to use this command because it's a branch, which is fine. I can just copy it and put it here. And now I run it, it's gonna ask me for my password. And now basically it tells me that it created a new branch and it all added the information there. So now, in theory, if I go back here, now my two new branches has been created. I have main and I have a new feature. So right now, if I come here and refresh, we can see here that GitHub automatically informed me that there's a new branch has been created, new code, a new feature. If I click on this drop down, we can see that I have main and I have the new feature branch. But I can see that all of the changes that I have added to the readme and the index.html are not apparent on the main because this is not what I have added them. If I go back to my test repo and I switch to the new feature branch with different version, you can see here that the changes are now visible. If I click on the index, I can see that all of this has been added. So now we can see that I have two completely different versions of the files, although I have added them together on the same repository. Now branches, this functionality is available through branches because basically it allowed me to do separation of concerns. It allowed me to create a version I can experiment with without affecting the other version. So now, if I go back here to the application and I go back to main, you can see I can switch to it and I can see all of these changes. So now, if I come back here, you can see here that this my friend's computer is still the same on main. So what happened right now on my friend's computer if they want to actually if I do a git fetch. So if I do git fetch, then I put the password. They're gonna basically see that there's a new branch created called the new feature 1. And if they do git pull, basically they're gonna tell them it's all up to date because basically they were not able, or basically on the current main branch they currently have, there's no changes. And here we can see, although I have uploaded changes from my main computer there. So if I go back to my diagram, so it will make it easier for us to follow. Although I have updated version 4, here we can see main is still on version 3 and the new feature 1 is now on version 4. And because my homeless computer is still on version 3 and version 3, so it means exactly the same thing, there's nothing to pull. So now what happened if Homer wants to switch to this new branch? It's pretty straightforward. Inside my terminal, I'm just gonna type, inside my terminal, and I type git branch -a, and this is on Homer's computer. And we can see here that now I can see that I have the new feature branches, which is I want. And on remote means that this branch exists on GitHub, but it does not exist locally on my machine, which is fine. I'm just gonna copy this and I'm gonna now get that. So I'm gonna put git checkout and I'm gonna put the same thing that I have copied, remote /origin / new feature -1. And now it says that I have switches to the new branch. And if I click here, git branch locally, you can see that I have the new feature. And main, I can switch back to main. I can put git checkout main. It switched back to main. If I get, again, the same command as before without the remote, it switched to the new feature branch. So now basically I'm able to get, if I type ls before so we can see it, I can see that I have both files here available for me. And now because I did that, I was able to get the same functionality that I had here now available on Homer's computer. So This was a quick summary about Git and how you can actually get started with the basic commands. I hope this video was helpful. If you like this video, please like, share and subscribe. It will really help the channel. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments down below. If you'd like me to cover more advanced Git topic, please let me know and I will make sure to cover it. Thank you very much for watching and have a great day.